Well, as the judge mentioned, the defendant's ultimate sentence, how much time she actually serves is going to be up to the Board of Parole. It could be, it could be up to 25 years. It could end up being maybe closer to 5 years.
The restitution, you talked about that early on in the case. Can you just explain the restitution?
Yes, the Iowa Code provides that whenever somebody dies as the result of a felony, the person committing the felony and causing the death has to be ordered to pay at least $150,000 in restitution to the victim's estates. The victim's estate, if the victim doesn't have a will, which he did not in this case, goes to either his surviving spouse or his parents. This victim had no surviving spouse, so all that $150,000 would end up going to his parents. Unfortunately, in this case, however, one of the parents killed him. We thought it would be really unjust for the parent who killed him to inherit all that money. Essentially, she would be paying into this restitution fund, and then half of it would go right back into her own pocket. Iowa does have something called the felonious death statute, which bars anybody who kills another person from inheriting from that person's estate. And I thought that this was going to be a little bit more of a fighting issue today at sentencing, but the court agreed with me that that's the way it was, and the defendant essentially took no position. In this case, the $150,000 that the defendant is ordered to pay is all going to go to the father rather than the mother who killed Marcus.
I just have one final one. Where does she go from here, and do you know a time frame?
Right now, I believe the jail is transporting her to what's called the Classification Center, which is down in Oakdale, Iowa, sort of near Iowa City. From that point, they will conduct a series of psychological tests and other testing on her to decide where would be the most appropriate placement for her. And then after that, she'll be taken to one of the women's prisons here in Iowa.
So you mentioned that it could be, it's 50 for a max, but it could be 5 even. What would, you said it's all up to the parole board, though?
It's whenever the parole board wants her out, and that's what makes me uneasy about this sentence. There is no mandatory minimum. The Board of Parole could let her out at any time they decide that she is ready to re-enter society. She's very young, and at that point, she could be having more children, and who knows what's going to happen to those children.
So is there any criteria that you would understand, or is it all up to the board at this point? Like, can you point out kind of what they might be looking for?
Well, the board is going to consider a number of things. They're going to consider her criminal history. They're going to consider the nature of the crime she committed. They do have a rubric that essentially assigns points for prior criminal history and for the nature of the offense, who was harmed by the offense, and the likelihood that this defendant is going to re-offend. And I believe this particular defendant scores low in most of those categories, which is another thing that makes me uneasy. I think it could be that she is back out in the community in as little as 4 years.